him when he was really going into it, and I was thinking, wow, this is it, and it's it because we don't necessarily get it always. We don't necessarily get an understanding on communication of science always. There are different approaches that have been used. I know many years ago I attended some efforts by Africa Bio. I remember Matthew Cook was a trainer in one of those. And I also know that in Rain Africa we did two such trainings on communication of risk, communication of science, but they are so limited in the region. There are issues that I wish they were part of curricula wherever we are, so that when we come out of whatever colleges, we do not necessarily only engage in science, but are able to talk about it in a manner that is accessible to others. The media, Zulu, you spoke about the media. By the way, I collected data from 6 countries on media coverages from the 3 most read newspapers in each of the countries. And I traced it back to 10 years ago, to 2002 actually, basically because of the drought year. And I tell you, when I heard the whole lot, it was so difficult to manage because it was so much, but it was so confusing in that some of them, you can't really get anything out of them. You know, it's like, there is a big report that says GMOs have been rejected. And when you get into the newspaper article, you are looking at who rejected GMOs. And there's only somebody in a workshop who referred that Africa is struggling to accept GMOs, things like that. So media needs to be trained on it if you need to use them for such purposes, other than just letting them to be part of your public awareness creation without training, because then you tend to have more confusion out there. Awareness raising about participation is also an issue. We expect people to know that we put 3 adverts in 3 newspapers. How do they get to know that? And what can they do if they want to say something about it is also an issue that we may need to create awareness through relevant institutions that we know has contact with stakeholders, but also through public meetings that we sometimes do attend. And then the tools used in SADC, I've already said this, I don't know why I repeated it, did I go back? I did. Now the key challenges of participation in biosafety regulation, I already did. What am I doing? Yeah, the level of participation we had in that act, consensus building. It's a challenge. There are quite a number of people who write around consensus building. How do you build consensus? Is it possible? But with such a technology and with the varied stakeholder group that you're addressing, is it possible to build consensus? So those are some of the issues.
Thank you.
Doreen, I'm coming back to the issue that the 2 of us have been disagreeing on for a long time. And I'm really not convinced that you can deduce a country position from the provisions in the law, because it really, for me, it defies the purpose of the law. For example, the example you are stating strictly was where countries really trying to refrain from adopting the technology, or was it because of the fears that was associated with the technology, whether they were ill-informed or not? So to say that you could analyze the law and deduce this is the position of this country, I'm not convinced that you can really do that from that specific instrument only. And the other point is the Malawi case. We know in international cooperation, sometimes actors plays an important role, and we have been referring to the president, former president, who was really supporting this technology, and she's gone. Do you think with the current president or the regime, the position will still remain, because that was probably also what happened in the Zimbabwean case?
Yeah, you can give some feedback on that.
Firstly, positions are not a static thing. You take a position today, you change tomorrow. But what we are simply doing here is looking at why the discordant positions at the moment is as is. And okay, thank you. I was asking if my voice is not loud enough in these meetings. I was saying, positions. Today you are supporting ZANU-PF, I come from Zimbabwe. Tomorrow you are supporting MDC. I mean, there are many issues that play a role, but it does not stop you from looking at why yesterday I was what I was, the way that those decisions were made. And secondly, the issue of liability, strict liability, is not about by having it you are saying no, but by having it you are making it almost impossible for technologies to come in. Look at how Monsanto has reacted to their BT approval. So this is the interpretation that we are taking. We are not saying the positions are what is playing on the ground and will be playing on the ground in the next 10 years, but we are saying for now it's making it almost impossible. For example, it's an enabling environment for technology to come in, because there are these steps that we have to pass that in some cases will either take long or in some cases are impossible to achieve.
Yes, but that doesn't indicate a position.
Okay, maybe the word position is what we may be querying, but it indicates what is currently happening. Why are we having discordant views on this technology?
As regulators, you don't want to take a blanket position on a technology like GM technology, because they are rare, they vary. It's in cotton, it's a different gene.
Agreed.
So you cannot say this is the position on this technology. Rather, consideration should be made on a case-by-case basis, and therefore, maybe that's where I find it difficult that countries would have.
Okay, all right, let me add another dimension a little bit to that story.
Almost confusion.
Not confusion. Is it possible that when you read different legal documents, you can be able to say, here they don't allow people to say, for example, buy cigarettes when they're below 18. Here they allow. It gives some feeling of what different nations have as an idea of regulating certain aspects.
Yeah, but it's not triggered by wanting the position. It's triggered by the fear that was associated with the technology, whether it is substantiated or not. I remember when we were doing when our bill was discussed.
Microphone is recording.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
I thought I was loud like this. So I remember when our bill was discussed in our parliament, one of our parliamentarians stood up and said, you should wear gloves and gloves and boots when you work with this technology. so when that kind of belief, or whether it is justified or not, people would say, oh, this might be, let us just be careful and do this. But it's not, the motivation was not because you want to have.
Okay.
All right, maybe
Let me take one question at a time because I'm not writing.
this one I think we may need to unpack it more.
I heard her,
We had it.
and I think we are coming. Maybe the way I'm putting it, and she is a lawyer now, I know. She's interpreting it from a different point of view. Now, what is being analyzed is not to say a nation has taken a position on their own accord. I spoke about the environment, the situational issues, the historical issues under which we develop our laws. And I actually spoke about the controversies that surround some of those years during which we developed our laws. They did contribute to the kind of statements we ended up with. The level of safety that we then put, or the level of tightness that we put in documents, will either show that they are creating an enabling environment. You adhere to these principles and you can get in your technology. Or they are so tight that it might take a long time, or some will not even want to attempt to try and bring in a product.
That is not a position.
Okay, maybe the word position is what you're arguing about. What do we call it?
Okay, I think let's rest it at this moment, and we can unpack it. Yeah. can take the floor.
Thank you. I was worried that you might forget.
Now,
I don't know what I'm going to say. It's going to be like supporting her or her, but I've got this, my observation when we are looking at most of our countries. You know, some want to sort of advise you that policy is not like every written document. There is podium policy, which has been stated somewhere, somehow by someone, and you need to follow that. But tomorrow, if you come to say, Colin, this is your policy, I'll ask you for the document. And in some cases, it seems we have that inconsistency of positions. I don't know whether it's the correct term to use to say position, but those statements where, like for example, we want to use two words here, a ban and a restricted end, for example. So you see, it's not a ban, but we are restricting. So where is it written? Can't see it. But it's happening. People are experiencing such things. I don't know how this can assist us, because I'm trying to look at such a situation as it relates to somebody who is outside the country.
so are you supporting that one?
It's not about supporting. I think there are no divisions. Actually, when I listen to all these contributions, they are not divisions. They actually are what I would term clarity that one needs to put in how they express this thing. Okay, fine. You know, that issue was debated at length in one of the meetings where I was, to say when politicians make announcements or make statements and the whole country rallies behind those statements in the way things develop in the country, how do you interpret that? Yeah. What do you call it? What is policy? Yeah. Is policy only written? Yes. So basically, and unfortunately, I debate with my colleague, the word position might be wrong, but the issue is there are indications of countries that where technology could be allowed according to their systems, and there are indications of countries where the technology might take so long to be allowed because of the words that are in their either state instruments or the actions that are happening in that country. And it's not anything bad, it's just that somebody needs to understand it to be able to then say, Africa is discordant because, and not because it's a fussy, it's not because we don't know, but because there are these reasons that are behind our discordance.
Okay, let me take the last contribution there to this discussion.
Yeah, I just want to find out from Doreen. I assume most of your data is from desk research.
No?
I just want to find out whether you have done research where you have investigated to say why these countries have these strict liability laws. I was just thinking out maybe they are trying just to protect their industries or their local companies. Because there was a certain issue about India and the European market. There were some products like, I think it was mango or oranges coming from India. Because of a certain issue, to say political issues with India and the European countries, the European countries had to put a strict provision, whether it was just a law or regulation in terms of the products coming from India. So I was just thinking aloud, maybe it's like a deliberate policy or deliberate provision so that they are trying to protect their local industries. I don't know if you have done really an inclusive investigation to say why is it putting these strict liabilities in the laws?
In one of those slides, I talk about agricultural systems and economic, socio-economic, economic-related issues. And I think, while I ask the questions, I actually say there are other issues that I have not put in those questions that relate to issues like economic decisions, for example, that are traceable. And you actually do get to analyze what that means. For example, you see not economic, but let's say the potato rejection in South Africa. Is there somebody from South Africa? The potato application for BT potato some years ago.
I can help you.
Yeah.
The beetroot potato, you recall, was developed by Michigan State and came through Egypt and then subsequently to South Africa. Even in Egypt, it was actually destined for marketing, and then there was market pressure. So when it came to South Africa, part of the, I know I had a different reason here, but part of the reason globally that we know is that the technology developer, Syngenta, actually don't distribute it. Why? Because they cannot guarantee stewardship. It's a vegetatively propagated material. South Africa, your neighbors don't have functional regulatory frameworks. So if these materials are put in people's pockets, I'll be busy multiplying them in the farm in Zimbabwe, and then if there's backlash in Zimbabwe, it will embarrass Syngenta. That's why. And then I also understand that the
market issues
is
was an issue. Smallholder farmers versus commercial. So you see, there are those things, and what I just did here was mainly talk to what is attributed to police processes, and not talk to what is attributed to national priorities or national economic-related decisions. But the research looks at all those kind of issues. So basically, and also secondly, this is not what I gave you is desk, but what I didn't give you is not desk. So in other words, because this is unpublished work and I couldn't go deeper into it, but there were interviews carried out in 6 countries in the region: Namibia, Swaziland, Malawi, Zimbabwe, who did I leave? Not Botswana, no. Zambia. Yeah. So there is that kind of confirmation on issues. So you start from perceptions, and then you kind of talk to people and you get real issues as they come from the ground.
All right. Anyone with something to be clarified? Otherwise, Doreen, you can explain the group.
I think the discussion took so long, and I'm not sure about time. Can you check time? We're fine.
We are now...
Because this was just an exercise to make this discussion happen in...
Third time from you and from Murphy. Just unpack this statement here to say where GMs have been accepted, the commercial farmers have come up and embraced because they saw the advantages. That looks like a very
strong statement.
Yeah, because I believe farmers don't operate in a vacuum. They operate where there are markets, and they know their produce is going to absorb, and they embrace, and everybody benefits. Why do you necessarily have to single out commercial farmers, yet in actual fact they do farming for service to the community or to the public? Why do you always want to stress commercial farmers saw the benefit and not the benefits actually to everybody? Because if a farmer is going to engage in something that is not going to give him business, it's not beneficial, they will not do it. But now there is a market, so everybody benefits basically. That's what I think.
Okay. Firstly, I think I'm referring to commercial farmers because it's one of those things that have a lot of baking information in terms of benefits that they accrue. Yesterday, on Monday, I spoke about the smallholder farmers and also spoke about what they say. But in terms of yields, mainly commercial farmers seem to have already had certain level of management of crops. So by adopting a new technology, many of them seem to have then been able to achieve a better yield improvement. But also because they are the first in the line of benefits. I cannot talk about the other benefits, the consumer, and because I actually didn't look at them. But in terms of those that have openly been said to by others, said to have benefited through improved yields, commercial, economic improvements are mainly, to me, commercial. I spoke about smallholder the other day and I said, yes, while the smallholders have highlighted benefits and certain researchers or scholars have said there's been improvement in yield, there's still a lot of discourse around the level of improvement of yield in African smallholder communities because of the context-specific issues, the type of technology, the type of challenge that farmer was experiencing, the management ability of that farmer, of the crop before.